This is the Parker Broadcast with Dr. James W. Parker.
Don't grow old, grow up. Until fairly recently, the word maturity has not been considered a compliment. To call a woman mature was akin in her mind to labeling her fat, dowdy, and void of sex appeal. Our advertising is based to a great extent on the common desire to look, act, and feel young. Men may not display this desire as openly as do women, but they are equally concerned with retaining their youth. Nor is staying young merely an obsession of the frivolous. At present, it is an economic necessity. Compulsory retirement age in business and industry is still 65 in most cases, and for the average wage earner, jobs are increasingly hard to find after the age of 35 or so. However, youth, for all its attractiveness, is only preparation for adulthood, a rehearsal period for the drama of life. To deny one's manhood or womanhood by desiring to live in a state of perpetual youth is an infantile attempt to stave off responsibility for facing life as a full-grown person. Maturity is growing up, and that dreaded old age sets in when we cease to grow. As long as we are learning, developing, contributing, producing, or enjoying, we are maturing, whether we are 6 or 96. We become old when we are no longer capable of improvement, regardless of calendar years. It would be wonderful to see the day come when qualities of mind and spirit are considered as glamorous and desirable as an unlined face or resilient muscle tone, when to be considered mature and wise brings more pleasure than to be told we look 10 years younger, and when nobody is ever considered by himself or others to be too old for anything he feels capable or desirous of doing. If this happy state of things ever comes about, we will no longer fear growing old. We will be grown up. The first step toward maturity is to accept responsibility for ourselves. It is much easier, of course, not to do this. It is easier to blame our parents, our boss, our teachers, our environment, our husbands, our wives, our children. We could even blame our ancestors, the government, or if we still need a scapegoat, Lady Luck herself. Lincoln felt so strongly about not blaming others that he made this statement in 1864. I am responsible to the American people, to the Christian world, to history, and, on my final account, to God. This is the bravest avowal any human being can make. And until we can accept responsibility in the same spirit before God and man, we have no right to think of ourselves as mature. While the comparatively new science of psychiatry has provided impressive-sounding excuses for those who can't face the demands of adult living, human beings always have had this tendency to blame their difficulties on some outside agency. One of the most striking qualities of Jesus was his stern and uncompromising common sense. When people came to him for help in healing, he didn't waste time probing into their subconscious to find out who or what was to blame for their predicament. "Take up thy bed and walk," he said. "Go and sin no more. Thy sins are forgiven thee." Jesus' attitude made it clear that the important thing was to remake one's life to a better pattern, not to wallow in the depths of self-pity. So many of the world's great names have become great in spite of and sometimes because of handicaps. Lord Byron had a club foot. Julius Caesar was an epileptic. Beethoven became deaf. Franklin D. Roosevelt was a victim of polio. Helen Keller was blind and deaf from an early age. Actress Susan Ball refused to let a leg amputation keep her from a happy marriage and success in motion pictures. And speaking of actresses, what about Sarah Bernhardt? Here was an ugly, illegitimate child who was kicked around as a youngster and who well might have been excused for never having risen above her sordid early environment. But Sarah became a great beauty and one of the immortals of the theater. George Bernard Shaw was impatient of those who complained of being handicapped by circumstances or otherwise. "People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are," he wrote. "I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, they make them. Life is not a joyride of uninterrupted bliss where we live happily ever after. It is a shimmering pattern of lights and shades, heights and depths, sunlight and shadow. Trouble will not always pass us by just because we refuse to face it. It is an integral part of human life, and our maturity is bound up in our attitudes toward disaster. To be human is to undergo some portion of suffering as well as of joy. King and beggar, poet and peasant, Judy O'Grady and the Colonel's lady go through the same tortures when faced by grief, loss, trouble, disaster. The young and immature of any age react with bitterness and resentment because they do not understand that tragedy like birth, death, and taxes is one of the conditions of living. Here are 5 big ways to help overcome or rise above disaster. 1. Accept the inevitable and give time a chance. 2. Take action against trouble. 3. Concentrate on helping others. 4. Use all you have of life while you have it. 5. Count your blessings. We must have strong beliefs and firm convictions in life, and we must act on the basis of those beliefs. Jesus said, "By their fruits ye shall know them." It is deeds that count. All the high-sounding philosophy in the world will do us no good if we do not live by it. Our fruits will be bitter and our lives hypocritical. It isn't faith that lets people down. We are the ones that sell our beliefs short by refusing to act on them and stick by them through thick and thin. Most people are afraid of the responsibility of making a decision, of carrying through a course of action. The fear of being blamed if things go wrong influences them more than the hope of success. So they avoid situations of responsibility whenever they can. And when decision becomes necessary, they retreat into a fog of worry, confusion, and doubt. The conflict set up by such postponement of necessary action can and often do result in mental and physical breakdowns. Like any other fear, the fear of taking action on a difficult problem can be licked only by plunging in and doing the thing we fear to do. Those who learn this early in life are fortunate. The ability to come to a decision and then act is not only desirable, it is a vital element in our protective equipment. Such a moment occurred in the life of Al Bishop of Springfield, Ohio. Mr. Bishop and his wife and tiny daughter were driving to Denver to spend the holidays when a blinding snowstorm closed in on them. They were blocked on all sides by the swirling snow, and night was approaching. The wind was hurling drifts of snow higher and higher, and the temperature was steadily dropping. After sitting there for an hour and worrying, Mr. Bishop recalled that they had passed a farmhouse about a quarter of a mile down the road. He realized that if they were to survive, they must take action. He carried his daughter and assisted his wife, sinking in snow up to his hips, but they made it. He recalls, "If I had not dared to take action after taking in our situation, we would all have perished miserably in the snow and cold." Yes, there are situations where nothing but hard-hitting, direct action will serve. In the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes we are told, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." And to these beautiful words perhaps we could add, there is a time to meditate and a time to act. And when our time comes to act, let's quit worrying, quit stalling for time, quit making excuses. Let's simply pull up our socks and go in swinging. The quality of excitement is the most essential ingredient for success in a given line of work. It is the emotional fuel that spurs us on to put forth our utmost efforts. Sir Edward Victor Appleton, the Nobel Prize winner, once made the startling statement, "I rate enthusiasm even ahead of professional skill as a recipe for success in scientific research." In other words, excitement brings our real self to the surface for feeling most deeply and intensely active and alive. It may be the excitement of an idea, the excitement of a personality, or a situation, but whatever form it takes, excitement is a stimulus which causes us to shed boredom, habit, and inhibition, and be ourselves for all we are worth. So the first rule of understanding others is to first have an understanding of ourselves. Know thyself is the beginning of wisdom, according to Socrates. And another great commandment for healthy, mature living is like yourself. Does this mean smug self-satisfaction? Not at all. It means self-acceptance, a clear-headed, realistic acceptance of ourselves as we are, together with a sense of self-respect and human dignity. A mature person does not lie awake nights comparing himself unfavorably with others, worrying because he does not have the confidence of Bill Smith or the aggressiveness and push of Jim Jones. He may criticize his own performance at times. He may be aware of his faults and deficiencies, but he approves of his own basic aims and motivations, and he tends to spend his energies improving his weak spots rather than merely deploring them. Solitude provides us with perspective from which we can view our lives more objectively. Be still and know that I am God is the advice given us in the Psalms. It is still good advice. Solitude is as beneficial to the soul as fresh air is to the body. To be completely dependent upon others for satisfaction and happiness is to place a burden upon those we love and take the joy out of our relations with them. To like, respect, and enjoy ourselves is as much a part of the healthy personality as is the ability to like others. To conform or to function on our own is a decision each of us make at one time or another. Nonconformity is not comfortable. Usually it isn't pleasant. Most of us prefer to move placidly along with the herd, protected by the anonymity of numbers, accepting without question or argument the guidance of our various shepherds. We are frightened at the mere thought of doing anything else. What we fail to realize is that this kind of safety is deceptive. Nothing is more vulnerable than a herd which can be stampeded in any direction. Maturity develops our basic convictions and beliefs, and it imposes upon us the necessity of living by them. Every person has an obligation to himself, mankind, and God to make the best use of the capabilities he has in whatever way seems best to him and most conducive to human happiness. It takes courage to champion an unpopular cause or to go counter to popular opinion, but there is no braver sight than a nonconformist standing up for his convictions when the chips are down. Another mark of maturity is the maturing mind, an adventure in adult living. The mind is the most important and essential part of our makeup. If we nourish and exercise it, it grows. If it is starved and neglected, it becomes stunted and atrophied from lack of use. We can all stimulate our mental powers by throwing away the old crutch that we didn't have the proper formal education and jump into the adventure of learning and advancing. We can grow old in years, we can lose our friends, but we'll never be too forlorn as long as we have absorbing interest to fill the blank spaces in our hearts. The man who gets married has the daring of a Jesse James, the courage of a wounded rhinoceros, and a disposition to gamble. He bets his life, his future, and his bankroll on a woman and his ability to keep her happy. The remarks and suggestions given here are not offered in the spirit of criticism, but on the premise that any man with enterprise to get married in the first place should be glad of a few hints on his odds for living happily ever after. 1. Give your wife appreciation. She will work and slave for you, stand by when things are slow, wear her old coat one more season, and love you always if you never stop telling her she's wonderful. 2. Be generous and considerate. And I mean the kind of consideration that says, of course invite your mother to visit us. It will be wonderful to see her. And generosity and consideration, like charity, begins at home. Show her the same consideration you would a beautiful stranger. 3. Don't let yourself go to seed. Appearance may not make the man, but it certainly makes up all of what we see of him. 4. Understand a woman's work. A husband should have some idea of what is involved in the sometimes monotonous routine of operating a household. A wife needs some stimulation of outside contact to keep her from feeling pinned in, and she must depend upon her husband to see that she gets out occasionally. 5. Back up your wife. Be dependable. When trouble comes, a husband who lets his wife know that the Marines have landed is better than all the romantic heroes of fiction rolled into one. She wants the emotional security of knowing that he stands beside her in small crisis or a large emergency. 6. Share her interests. Take an interest in the small incidents of which her life is made. You will be surprised to see how soon you will become interested yourself, and how interested she will become in your life. 7. Love that wife. A man likes to feel that he is loved. A woman likes to be told. Tenderness isn't mushiness. Wives are perceptive enough to read your affection in 1,000 ways. A squeeze of the hand at the movies, an unexpected kiss, an expression of gratitude. Try it, it's magic. Now, since half the population is male, getting along with men is every woman's problem and duty. What are the qualities men hopefully expect women to supply? Here they are. 1. Be good-natured and understanding. A man would rather eat canned beans in an atmosphere of gaiety and charm than dine on filet mignon with a fretful, whining, nagging female. 2. Be a good companion. Whether as a partner or interested in rooting on the sidelines, be an interested, inspiring companion. 3. Be a good listener. Nearly all men subscribe to the popular myth that women talk too much. What they mean is that they don't get a chance themselves to talk enough. Listening means, first, giving attention. It also involves both concentration and cooperation. Ask a question now and then, a good one that shows you hear what he's saying and want to hear more. 4. Be adaptable. A man can't understand why, when he suggests an impromptu weekend in the country, his wife hasn't a thing to wear and wants to wait until the next week so she can notify the milkman. When a man gets an idea, he likes to translate it into action, now, immediately. The gal who learns to adapt to a man's moods has come a long way toward penetrating the mystery of getting along with men. 5. Be efficient, but not officious. Man wants a girl with the feminine appeal of Elaine the Lily Maid and brains enough to appreciate him and, if necessary, help him add to the family income. 6. Be yourself. You cannot change your personality, and besides, what's wrong with using the one God gave you? All you need to do is take the wraps off and let it shine. Develop the good qualities and eliminate the unattractive ones. 7. Be glad you're a woman. The joyful acceptance of one's sex is not necessarily dependent upon marital status. It is a result of healthy attitudes and emotional maturity. Why should people like you? The entire secret of winning friends is to stop worrying about results, whether people will like us or not, and start doing those things which will inspire love and friendship. Every experienced salesman knows that worrying about whether or not he will make a sale can cause such a psychological block that he can't make a proper presentation. Instead, you must concentrate on the service you want to render. For the moment your attention is centered on service to others, you become more dynamic, more forceful, and harder to resist. How can you resist someone who is trying to help you? Friendship, like any other kind of success, must be earned by concentration upon giving, not receiving. The ability to win friends has nothing to do with backslapping familiarity, life of the party antics. It is a state of mind, an attitude towards life and people, a desire to give love, interest, attention, and service to others. Why should anyone grow old? The twilight years of life, properly understood, should be our richest, the harvest time when we can enjoy the mellow fruits of experience and distilled wisdom. In short, the time for really enjoying the rewards of maturity. An 81-year-old woman in Kansas City returned a rocking chair her daughter gave her with the curt explanation, "I have no time for a rocking chair, I'm too busy." This lady has grasped the secret of growing up instead of growing old. She has learned that work is a basic principle of life, health, and usefulness. For those who would avoid the perils of old age, the best advice is to follow the example of this old lady. Give back the rocking chair and get busy. Part of the poise and assurance of maturity comes from knowing where to turn for the right kind of assistance. Only a fool supposes that he is completely self-sufficient in an emergency. In order to keep growing, to reach out after fulfillment, our spirit needs nourishment as well as constant repair. Our value to ourselves and others is largely determined, whether we realize it or not, by our recognition and realization of our relationship to some unseen force which is a part of us and yet above and beyond us. Once we understand that we are a part of this great force, our relations with our fellow human beings fall into clearer focus. If we accept the fatherhood of God, we must also accept the brotherhood of man. A concern for others' welfare is the basis of ethics as well as religion. But we cannot do much for others until we have first done something for ourselves, until we have a spiritual core, a center for our lives to give motivation and direction to our activities. Prayer fills us with awareness of the constant presence of God. We are never alone. There can be no true maturity without wisdom of the Spirit. A child's mind in an adult's body can be dangerous. Only by growing up as an individual, By desiring wisdom of the soul, by putting away childish things and accepting the responsibilities of adulthood, can we in any way affect the shape of things to come. What we are as individual human beings has some kind of effect upon every person with whom we have contact. Prayer helps fashion the kind of person you are. Explore your individuality, and you can have the maturity which will make life more exciting, more rewarding with every passing year. And you will indeed grow up instead of grow old. This has been a review of the wonderful, wonderful book, Don't Grow Old, Grow Up, written by Dorothy Carnegie. As you would suspect, this book carries the Carnegie touch, but it does more than that. It delves into the profound subject of maturity in such an interesting and practical way that men and women alike will benefit for the rest of their lives by reading this excellent book. It is available through Share International, Hotel Texas Building, Fort Worth, Texas, for only $3.50. As with the other books in this record review series, we strongly urge you to secure your own copy for your library, and after reading the entire book at least twice, you can repeatedly review it by this recording.